All right, everyone, it's time to condemn the corporate media once more for its treatment of Gab. 48 hours after a never-Trumper posts on Gab and then goes and blows a bunch of people away, Gab gets mass deplatformed. Their domain registrar, their cloud hosting provider has dropped them. 2 different payment processors decided to drop them. So basically, they're being Infowars'd. Infowars was kind of a dry run to see what the public's reaction would be to the mass depersoning, the systemic corporate harassment of a competitor. And I'll tell you why they're doing this. It's not about politics strictly. Some people are saying, well, it's right before the midterms. Of course they're going to kick Gab off. No. Because Gab alone, one out of many thousands of points of significant political power in the anti-establishment, that doesn't do anything midterms related. This doesn't slow down the spread of memes. It doesn't systemically and meaningfully deplatform the average commentator. It's just a harassment of the site. It is purely about money. I'll tell you why. Gab, over the last year, has grown substantially. From what were they at the beginning of the year? I can't remember what figure they gave. It was considerably less. They're getting up towards 1 million active users. Millions and millions of interactions per day among the user base. We're talking about a site that now has a 6-figure domain name. They have become solvent. They've become, they've offered essentially stock in their company to the public now so you can invest in them. They're doing quite well. It's sort of like Minds, BitChute, Steam, at these other sites are forming a nexus of increasingly successful sites. They're becoming increasingly successful because of pressure from the outside, causing them to evolve. This is how it works in the business world. Pressure can cause you to escape that pressure because you're looking for ways to innovate. You're looking for ways to outcompete the competitors anyway. Old existing tech can't really do that. They're already established in their sort of technological stratum. So what they're doing is trying to deplatform these groups by using human misery, by using acts of violence, crimes, terrorism, whatever, as an excuse to target these groups. Why do you think all of these journalists, so-called, of course, from all of these mainstream sites right now, are arguing for the deplatforming of Gab, talking about how it's a wonderful thing? It's because they themselves don't use Gab. They feel intimidated by it. They realize that Gab is largely comprised of people outside of the mainstream, and thus people outside of their audiences. Well, they're getting their news from other sources. So what better way to try to outcompete them? 2 groups, fiscally speaking, benefit. Always look at who benefits from something to judge who most likely is behind something that's been perpetrated. Gab competes with the corporate media. Jim Acosta is not going to use Gab, in other words. They all use Twitter. Big Tech benefits from the deplatforming of Gab. Gab is a direct competitor of Twitter. It's technically a direct competitor of Facebook. Them branching out into essentially live streaming and video hosting after a fashion is technically a competitor with YouTube. Big Tech doesn't like this, but they can't attack them directly. Twitter can't just randomly ban Gab and get away with it because Gab is structured around looking very much like and functioning very much like Twitter. So they wait until there's a human tragedy, and they and their partners in the corporate media defame Gab, which is exactly what they're doing, as though Gab was responsible for the actions of its users. Gab is not responsible for the actions of its users. It's a platform. They've made it quite clear. Big Tech straddles the line between publisher and platform. They don't want to take up either line. Here's the thing. Here's what Silicon Valley, the big tech firms, have done. Congress should ask them, do you consider yourself, for all intents and purposes, a publisher of material, in which case you are legally culpable for that material, however you can pretty much censor and do whatever you want. Safeguard your site, but you're going to need to live moderate literally fucking everything. Or are you a platform? There are certain responsibilities that come with being a public platform. You're exonerated of legal difficulties with regards to your user base. You're not going to be held responsible because someone defamed or they broke copyright infringement or whatever. It's not your fault because you're just a platform. But you can't just go around censoring people in a wanton manner. You're no longer strictly a solely private entity. Big Tech doesn't want to answer that question because either one comes with significant repercussions. They want the benefits of being both a publisher enabled to suppress info and a platform that is legally not culpable for that material. Gab has made it fairly clear. Alt Tech has made it clear. We're platforms. No, we're not publishers of info. We're not responsible for our users. We take a hands-off approach. We just believe in free speech. The reason why Gab is doing well in the first place is because of censorship of unpopular opinions by lamestream tech sites like Twitter. That doesn't mean that the site is overrun with Nazis. Most of the users on Gab, I guarantee you, are not any kind of identitarian or nationalist. Most of them are presumably classical liberals that don't support censorship. Evangelicals, people with religious beliefs that, they want an echo chamber, in all honesty. That is true. But that doesn't make them identitarians. Some of these people sound like fucking religious hippies to me. And then people who follow, libertarian path, like myself. I use Gab. So thanks to big tech, and thanks to these so-called journalists, which are my competitors too, Gab is now currently down, and it'll take several days probably for them to get back up on their feet. Which means one less site that my followers, over 17,000 on Gab alone, can actually keep up with my work. See, it's affecting my work too, and of course they'd love to, label me far-right or something too. They can go back through my videos and see if that's true. Any person with sanity knows that it's not, but the problem is the average CNN viewer is too fucking dumb to do their own research. I see people, even on Gab's posts, and by the way, they're not being censored by Gab on these posts, even though they're harassing other people. Very, very telling that Gab even supports free speech on Twitter by not randomly banning anyone that tries to contribute negatively towards their image. Very, very telling now, isn't that? It's a little bit above and beyond the journalists so-called that are attacking them. I see people, and these aren't, rich people or celebrities. They're just average users with little blue wave symbols and snowflakes on their on their Twitter handles. They're like, oh, thank goodness the Nazi site has been deplatformed. No, number one, you'll fail. Gab will still be there. It'll just innovate in order to escape censorship. Alt tech will do fine. You're not going to stop it. The cat's already out of the bag. So number one, you've already fucking failed. You failed to stop independent commentators. You failed to stop independent news. You're failing to stop alt tech. The crypto revolution's here. The blockchain is here. Mesh networks are here. It's all here. Silicon Valley has already lost. They're just trying to harass their way through and muddle through right now. And by the way, one quick aside. All of these startups never sell out your ideas to big tech. The sites in the past that refused to sell out to a big corporate Silicon Valley site made so much more money than those that sold out over time. Don't do that, because what they'll do is they'll try to monopolize the programs and apps and innovations that you're making in order to suppress alt tech further. They're seeking to do that actively in order to continue through the subsequent technological paradigm. A lot of them won't make it. A lot of you, like Twitter, will it exist in 10 years? 50-50 chance, at best. Possibly less than that. Facebook, will it exist? Yeah, because they'll be solvent by selling the same chunks of user data over and over to Chinese firms. It'd be wonderful, only they might screw their own site ad-wise and end up being literally nothing more than a storage of people's personal info until finally they get cracked down on at some point. Will Google continue to exist? Yeah, Google will be fine. Yeah, they're a little bit too, they have their hands in everything. It'd be very difficult for them to get actually knocked down to pay. In fact, they'll continue to be one of the big top 10 firms, probably for the foreseeable future. Like, we'll probably be dead until they'll still be. They'll be like Robco or, one of these fictional outlets from Fallout universe. But Gab's getting Infowars. They are trying to mass suppress it. But first and foremost, fundamentally, the lamestreamers, the authoritarians, the censorship-loving little minds of the world, they've already lost. They're like, oh, ha, 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 Nazi site's gone. Well, no, you failed. It's still there. It's just they got to get a different cloud hosting provider and a new payment system. Look, alt tech is already innovating those things too. You're just pushing alt tech to invest more time and resources in escaping your censorship by developing. They're going to have their own registrar. They're going to have their own payment processing, their own commenting functions being built by BitChute as we speak. Crypto and site tokens and entry into the blockchain, all these wonderful things to innovate, make things more efficient anyway. It's going to make it cheaper for them to run their sites. They're going to run roughshod over you. Then, watch what'll happen. What happens when alt tech and things like that happen? And it's happened before 3 times in tech history. It happened with, the early wave, the dot-coms, IRC days, early wave social media, early wave alternative tech, even like site alternatives like a VidMe or something, and now it's happening for a 4th time with true alt tech. What happens is that the smart people get in early. The smart and usually edgy people are the first ones there right after the innovators themselves. The tech literate innovators enter first. That's the tip of the pencil. And then the sharpened part of the pencil is people like myself, which have intelligence and know that it'll take off. And then all the normies start piling in, and after 10 to 20 years, they tend to corrupt these movements. Yeah, they eventually, what we call alt tech will be old tech too. We've got to understand that as well. Some of these sites will die. Some of them will become dominant. Some of them will become like true big tech firms. And at that point, they will begin to corrupt. Like, you can't understand. YouTube and Twitter and Facebook were prefaced on being free speech outlets originally. Remember that? You know, it was a long time ago, especially with Twitter. Jack's like, oh, we're a free speech platform. And now he jokes about it. Oh, I never really meant that. It was just a joke. I was just joking, establishment of the world. But Gab will still be there. They've failed, number one. And number two, it just shows that they're the boring soccer moms of the world. Like, they just listen to whatever some fucking corporation tells them. How much more of a thought slave can you possibly be? Really funny. That's about all. Peace out.